White people, let's talk about it. Let's talk about our violence, white violence. No more deflecting, no more blaming everything on everybody else. Let's confront ourselves. White people in America, our history is so extremely violent.
Hi lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Strana. Thank you so much for all the love and support. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real
So lovelies,
MVP.
it's about time somebody said it out loud. For years, we've heard white America talk about crime in the inner city, gun violence, or even minority issues. But what about when the mirror finally turns around? What happens when white people start calling out their own crimes, their own corruption, their own hypocrisy, and demand better from within? This is about HATE. It's about honesty because you can't fix a broken system by lying about it or by lying about who is actually breaking it. That is why on this particular stage, I was able to put up some stitches from colored people actually calling out this and looking out for change. Let's dive into it and we're going to come back.
White people, let's talk about it. Let's talk about our violence, white violence. No more deflecting, no more blaming everything on everybody else. Let's confront ourselves. White people in America, our history is so extremely violent. And instead of confronting that, we continue to blame other people for the issues and the problems in this country, instead of just taking ownership of our part to play in everything, which is a huge part. Can we stop scapegoating other groups of people, please, and just look at ourselves? White people, it's time to talk about it. Like, it's long past time. Getting rid of other groups of people in this country is not going to make this country better. It's not going to make your life better. It's not going to make you better. I think white people are so scared to talk about race and to talk about white violence and white supremacy because they don't want to connect themselves to it. We don't want to feel like we're a part of the problem. But unless you're acknowledging the reality of how the US, this country, runs, you are a part of the problem. I truly believe in my heart, in my soul, that if you're born a white person in this country or on this planet, but I'll just speak about this country, part of that journey is to dismantle systems that have been built to oppress other people. The hard work of life is to confront yourself. How do I benefit from the way that things are? And how does my benefiting from those things harm other people? And instead of walking around with, 1,000-pound bag of shame on your back, consider it your responsibility to do that work. Consider it an opportunity that you are in the best possible position to make this world a better place by not accepting racist and prejudiced and oppressive systems for what they are and trying to contribute to changing them. Use the privilege that you have for good. I don't think that anybody can ever really love themselves without being honest about themselves, without being honest with themselves. And that work is painful and hard, but it's so worth it. White people, you don't have to consciously think that you're better than other people in order to contribute to harm against them. All it takes to contribute to harm is to stay silent and disengaged. White people, can we finally get this shit right? Can we finally take accountability? Can we finally look ourselves in the mirror and decide that this isn't good enough? We're not doing a good enough job. You aren't losing because somebody else is safe and cared for. You aren't losing because somebody different than you exists. White people, let's talk about it. Let's start having these conversations with ourselves and with each other. It's time. White people, let's
As a white man of European descent, I thought I'd get on here and say what needs to be said. The white on white crime has to stop. As Fox News and Republican pundits love to talk about black on black crime all the time, I think it's worth noting that the majority of mass shootings are committed by white men. And the majority of victims of those shootings are white people, mainly white children. Actually, the majority of perpetrators of crimes in this country are white men. So, since one party, the Republican Party, likes to make everything about race and broadcast every time a black person commits a crime or a brown person commits a crime or an immigrant commits a crime, I think it's worth noting again that today we found out the shooter of Charlie Kirk, a white man, was Tyler Robinson, another white man. We've got a real white-on-white problem in this country, and we need to fix the white-on-white crime.
Hi, I'm Kylie, and white conservatives are terrified of POC outnumbering us. And I truly believe this is the motivation behind a lot of hateful policies in the US. If you haven't heard of the Great Replacement Theory, it is that over time, if enough black and brown immigrants come to the US, as well as white people having children with POC, then over time, POC will outnumber white people. And the reason that this is so unsettling to a lot of white people, especially conservative white people, is that they are terrified that if POC become in power, then they will treat us like we've treated them in the past, which is obviously not great. It involves subjugation of people, enslavement, assault, violence of basically every kind. And I think that white people can feel the shift happening as they are becoming more and more outnumbered. And that is why they are clinging so tightly to power in Congress and with the president right now. And that's why it's so funny when white people deny that racism exists, because if they didn't think racism did exist, they wouldn't be scared of being outnumbered. But they understand the ways that we have treated people of color has been atrocious, and thus they are scared of the tables turning and of being in that position of subjugation.
So one thing I think is interesting is I grew up in a small town, very rural, 3,500 people, one stoplight, primarily white, primarily conservative. There were a few Hispanic families, but no black people, no Asian descent, none of that. And I now live about 2 hours away in a metro area of more than 3 million people, obviously very diverse. And it's just interesting to me how strong racism can be. When you think about the idea that any time I have looked up the county jail roster for my hometown, all white people, and primarily males. And it just goes to show that, like, the people in my hometown, those who are afraid of or cast blame upon or hatred for black and brown people, Asian people, anyone who doesn't look like them, right? And they think of where I live as like, oh, I would never go there. I would never go there if I didn't want to get unalived, like scary people and whatever, you know? And in reality, like, their neighbor is probably in jail for SAing their granddaughter. And you still support white people to the fullest extent. Like, it's...
Whiteness is a performance, and the people who struggle the most with that reality are the progressive ones. Violence is so deeply embedded in that performance. Violence and shame and a compulsion to enact the appearance of goodness and not necessarily goodness itself. One of the ways that we see this play out, particularly in progressive whiteness, is in the violence that we're willing to do to one another, in rejecting people from community or immediately cast out into outer darkness. The violence that we're willing to enact on people the moment that they step out of line is part of our performance of whiteness. And we're performing it unconsciously, thinking that it is rightness, that it is the good and right thing to do. I keep thinking about Sarah Bellamy's essay on performing whiteness, in which she says something along the lines of, you know, when white people witness what they think of as benign racism day in and day out, then it doesn't register. They make excuses. They refuse to see what's right in front of their faces. The moment that there's an act of violent racism that's in their face that they can't ignore, the first thing they do is immediately scramble to distance themselves from the white person or white people who would commit that kind of outwardly violent racism. The moment that the camera footage hits the internet, the good white people want to make sure that everyone knows that they're the good white people. How is this any different? For all of those who are sitting there and saying, if you're not crying right now, something's wrong with you, how is this any different? I don't want anyone to die from gun violence. That's what I vote for. That's what I advocate for. the work that I do in political spheres, that's part of it. That's my belief. I can sit here and fully believe that no one should experience that. That should happen to no one, and no one should have to witness it. No one should have to see the video against their will like I unfortunately did yesterday. No one should have to see that. No one should have to experience it. We shouldn't live in a society where that is a fact of life. I can fully believe that something like that should not have happened to anyone. And also, it's okay that I'm not sitting here crying because a violent person who advocated for violence and caused violence met a violent end.
You know, as I was watching Ezra Klein speak with Ta-Nehisi Coates, my mind kept going back to 2015 and the Making the Murderer documentary. As I watched as white people around the country became mortified to watch episode after episode the justice system in this small rural white town use all of its power, privilege, and resource to basically, in their conception, crush this man's whole existence through corruption, through abuse of power, so on and so forth. And I remember my black friends and colleagues being like, yeah, bro, this is a regular Tuesday for us. Like, we're the most exonerated people in this country because we're the most wrongfully accused people in this country. And I think that divide sums up the divide I witnessed between Ezra Klein and Ta-Nehisi Coates in that interview. White people and black people have lived such fundamentally different lives, sociologically speaking, that it's hard for an intelligent person like Ezra Klein to see through the white privilege in order to recognize that the things he's afraid of happening have been common features of black life from the very beginning. So, for example, when he expresses a fear of the rise of white nationalism, right, and the ever-narrowing definition of who deserves to be a citizen and who deserves rights, that's a common feature under which black people have been living from the very beginning. When he expresses his fear about losing his life for speaking political truth on a public platform, that has been a common feature of black life from the very beginning. When he expresses his fear about living under a president who views him as a second-class citizen because of his political affiliation, and the fear he has about living under a president who is now not going to care about him or people like him's interests in this country, that is a common feature of black life from the very beginning. There has never, and I mean never, been a president of the United States that could consider black interests to the same extent that they consider white interests. And I don't care what president you look at. It could be Barack Obama. It could be FDR. It could be Teddy Roosevelt. Doesn't matter. You can use Flint, Michigan as an example for Barack Obama, although there are so many others. You can use redlining for FDR, although there's so many others. You could use the example that Teddy Roosevelt set with Booker T. Washington at the White House and never inviting another black person to the White House again after the backlash that he faced. Doesn't matter what examples you use. There has never been a president that has been able to consider the interests of black America in the way that it considers the interests of white America. So in many ways, Ezra Klein tells on himself again and again and again every time he talks about a fear that he is facing under this rising authoritarianism. Because the fact of the matter is that Black Americans have been living under an authoritarian regime from the beginning, and that authoritarian regime is called whiteness. Thank you for coming to my motherfucking TED Talk.
You know something about the ICE agents? Almost all of them are men. My demographic. That's not a coincidence. You don't see women ICE agents out there because they're emotionally stable. They're in charge of their emotions. This is what they chose. A lot of these little wannabe alpha males are probably 3%ers. Probably they're on January 6th. Probably Proud Boys. They get off on hurting other people. This is what they like to do. The vast majority wouldn't even fit into Pete Hegseth's academy. They can't even do 10 push-ups. Have you seen these guys? They literally fall over just chasing people. They can't even get out of their own way. This goes back to the toxic masculinity that I talk about. It's this desire to be some kind of alpha male by beating people down because it makes them feel good. They're emotionally immature. The vast majority of these little boys were probably breastfed by their dads for too long, or their moms didn't love them, or didn't come to their baseball games. So the only way they know how to be an alpha male is Schadenfreude. It's a German word that means that people love the suffering of others. That's what MAGA is in a nutshell. They love hurting other people, tearing other people down, demonizing other people. Gay people, trans people, anybody that doesn't fit into their bigoted, racist box of straight white men. That's it. Toxic masculinity needs to be addressed, and we have to keep talking about it. Young men that follow the racist podcaster bought into this bullshit. They watch Joe Rogan, and they think that somehow that's masculinity. It's not. Fear through control is not strength, it is weakness. Come on, we have to do better for our young men. You know something?
Like, seriously, lovelies, you know what's powerful? When white people start calling out white crimes, not to shame, not to divide, but to finally tell the truth that has been buried for generations. For decades, America has been told a lie that painted minorities, especially black and brown community, as the face of crime. Why the crimes happening right now in white neighborhood were wrapped in excuses and silence. When it's a white man, it's mental health, right? When it's a white woman, it's tragic. Just call it maybe a tragic mistake. But when it comes to someone with a darker skin complexion, suddenly it's a thug, a gang, a problem. And people are finally saying enough. Even sometimes they call it a culture. They even target maybe a black culture. That is their culture. That is how, they behave and all of that. But right about now, more white Americans are standing up and saying, no, we've not, or we are not doing that anymore. We are not blaming minorities for what is happening in our backyards. They are calling out their own, the corruption in business, the mass pew pew, the domestic terrorism, the fraud, the exploitation, the hidden drug trade, all the things that never make the evening news in the same way. They are saying we want truth and justice. We've got to start with us, and which is actually the truth. I like the fact that it's actually more, pan-colored women coming out to spill. That's not even betrayal, that is bravery. Because it's easy to point fingers at others. It's easy to say those people are the problem. But it takes real courage to look into the mirror and say, no, we need to do better. To tell your own community, stop using black and brown people as a scapegoat for what you've refused to fix at home. It's about accountability. It's about breaking a cycle of denial that's been running too long or far too long, lovelies. Because how can a country heal if one side keeps pretending it's pure while quietly rooting from the inside? These white voices calling out white crime, they are not just talking about criminals. They are talking about culture, the culture that hide behind privilege, that gets to fail without being labeled, that get to harm without being stereotyped. And they are saying we can't keep hiding behind the privilege. And seriously, when I saw this lovelies, I was like, this is actually a good one. I have been stitching and posting some of these stitches from, pen colored people talking about how enough is enough. And that is what I can actually commend. And I'm saying that they cannot keep hiding behind the privilege and calling it fairness. You see, this isn't all about HAT, it's about the truth. Because truth doesn't divide, it cleanses. It's not all about tearing down white people, it's about tearing down hypocrisy, lovelies. It's about teaching the next generation that accountability is not an attack. It is the only way to evolve. You know, when pen-colored people call out white crime, they are helping the whole nations. Because with the way at which things are happening right about now, it actually looks like the problem is not even the black or brown community. The problem is within them. Those people who keep on maybe closing and trying to debunk from the truth. But when white people begin to call it out, like the stitches I was able to put up here, it's a sign of relief. They're helping the whole nation because real equality only happens when everyone is held to the same standard, when nobody gets a free pass because of their skin. And that's the kind of honesty America has needed for a very long time. So to every white person speaking up, I think they're actually, doing a good thing, even though they are just speaking and no action yet. But I think this is also a good start. If they can point out you know, all of the troubles, the crimes going on in their state community, I think it's a very good start, right? They are actually doing well with the generations before them because their own generation, the ones before them, were so scared to do that. They're so scared to come out and spew fact. So I think that they are also breaking the silence that protected the guilty and punished the innocent. They are proving that love for your people means holding them accountable, not accusing their wrongs. And that's why how changes begin, not with blame, but with truth and courage to say enough, hiding, enough blaming. We need to do better, and it started with us. That is why when I saw this, I was so impressed. Like, I've been seeing a couple of those stitches on my For You, and I was like, okay, I think it's a very good start. Anyway, lovelies, wanna just leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We're just here for educational and informative purposes. So please share this video. Subscribe to this channel if you're here to do that. Like, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one.
Just leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So please share this video. Subscribe to this channel if you're yet to do that. Like, and I will see you love this when I upload the next one.